In 2015, the old school RuneScape community voted on one of the most requested updates in the game's history, the addition of permanent free-to-play worlds. For the first time in a long time, pretty much anyone could experience old school RuneScape without paying a monthly subscription, which was a huge milestone for the game. But hidden inside that same poll was another proposal. Old School Bonds, a system that allowed players to spend real money in exchange for in-game gold. And now, over 10 years later, it's become such a normalized form of monetization that you'll find plenty of players who believe OSRS doesn't have any microtransactions. It's a complete contrast to back in the day when, such implementations would be widely known and criticized. That shift in perception says a lot about how the community has come to view monetization in MMOs, and more specifically, how opinions on old school bonds have changed over the years. One of the big reasons why OSRS was launched in the first place back in 2013 is because players were unhappy with how RuneScape was evolving at the time, particularly with the introduction of monetization features like the Squeal of Fortune, which allow players to spend real money for a chance at winning valuable items, as well as the evolution of combat, which changed the game so drastically that many players no longer wanted to continue playing. There are a lot of things going wrong with this version of the game, and you could argue that much of it began when Jagex was sold to a private investment firm. The work culture, along with the company's core values and principles, usually changes over time when these acquisitions take place. Jagex once had a policy known as Rule Number 12, which stated they never wanted RuneScape to be just a game in which you could buy your way to success. And if they started letting people do that, then it would devalue the game for other players. And so when they came up with the idea of relaunching old school RuneScape with a community-led approach in mind, that also meant rebuilding trust with the player base and staying true to those core values. But obviously that trust was broken once again when they decided to introduce old school bonds, and they did so arguably in the worst possible way. One of the company staffs had said that there were no plans to introduce microtransactions into old school RuneScape, but only 25 days after that statement, this poll was released to the public. Why is it that so many people seem to overlook the fact that free-to-play servers, something that was highly requested by the community, were bundled together with one of the worst monetization features that nobody even asked for? And why couldn't we vote on these two features separately? Now, to their defense, they claim that this was something that just had to be done, alongside the implementation of free-to-play servers.
Is this old school's only chance at free-to-play? The only way we can do free-to-play is if we do it with membership bonds.
They also claim that this will give them the opportunity to expand the team and deliver bigger updates. And when you look at how much OSRS has grown over the years, that does make you want to believe it. Especially when you look at how much content it has received for both old and new players. It also has a very healthy and active player base in the hundreds of thousands, and they continue to break new player records whenever they release new events. However, the original old school RuneScape back then, somewhere between 2004 and 2012, actually had plenty of these servers without any additional revenue. There were so many of them that you could log in and play at any time, and they never added any microtransactions. It was just the monthly membership, which was also way cheaper. Nowadays, RuneScape membership in some countries is more expensive than a World of Warcraft subscription, despite all the inflation and everything that's been going on. And considering that Jagex wasn't doing so well at the time, they needed to make a change that was visible enough to their investors. We could see this with the other version of the game, known as RuneScape 3, which continued to receive more and more microtransactions. RuneScape had also struggled with bots and real-world trading for a long time. Instead of having players buy gold from third-party websites, they could make those transactions legal by allowing players to buy gold directly from the company. And so I find it hard to believe that free-to-play servers could only exist with the help of bonds, when in reality, they just wanted to make more money. There was some backlash when old school bonds were first introduced, but it didn't last very long. I also couldn't find anything on YouTube because almost nobody has revisited this topic over the years. That's pretty surprising considering how aggressively other MMOs are criticized whenever they introduce similar monetization. Meanwhile, old school bonds have become so accepted that it almost feels like players are pretending like it doesn't exist. This includes the CEO of Jagex himself and the people that are currently working at the company.
However, we will not be allowing pay-to-win features to enter these servers. As for us, it just goes against the fundamentals of old school. Yeah, we want a nice, fair environment, no matter what your server's going to be, where everyone's sort of playing on the same playing field again, which is like an ethos of old school.
It shouldn't need to be said out loud, but there will never be microtransactions in old school RuneScape, ever.
I mean, he's literally saying OSRS will never have any microtransactions, despite knowing that the old school bond is already there. Then there's the players that claim on a tier list of aggressive monetization, bonds are at the bottom. But I have to push back on this because I think that's a crazy statement. They seem to believe that it's the best possible form of microtransaction, that it only provides the smallest amount of advantages. You can literally stand at the marketplace with all of your gold and just buy a bunch of items that you need to level up your skills more efficiently. That includes the best weapons and armor in the game to help you in a variety of ways. Obviously, you need some level of skill and knowledge to be in a better position, and you also have to invest enough time depending on the skill. But you will have a significant advantage over another player because you can accomplish your goals much faster. This isn't like buying convenience items like inventory slots that usually being sold in other MMOs. We're talking about buying millions of in-game currency with real money, and it's almost always considered paying for a huge advantage in most video games. Now, there is a general belief that if the bonds didn't exist, then people would still buy gold from third-party websites. And while that may be true, it usually doesn't account for the majority of the player base. Although, when you do allow such transactions to be normalized by the company, players will then eventually pay for this advantage, because it's much safer knowing they can buy gold legally without getting their accounts banned. The only exception I can find for OSRS when you cannot take advantage of the old school bonds is Iron Man, which is a separate game mode. You have to play and grind pretty much all by yourself, with no way to buy things off the marketplace or have the ability to trade with other players. It's one of the gameplay modes that I would say is the best addition to RuneScape, as it feels really good knowing that you can achieve your goals without taking any shortcuts. You can still enjoy the game for what it is, despite the old school bonds, and thousands of players are already doing that. But at the end of the day, what should really matter is the adventure and the journey you get to experience along the way. Of course, every player have their own reasons for why they want to skip a certain grind and reach the end game, and that could be a discussion for another time. Anyway, I didn't want to make this video longer than it needed to be because, you know, MMO players can be very tribalistic, and they often argue back and forth over what is and isn't pay to win. However, it's one thing to say that old school bonds don't have a huge impact on your progression, but it's another to pretend like they don't exist at all. Which is why I wanted to talk about them, the reason for why they were introduced to begin with, and how the community's perception of them has changed over time. And it's unfortunate because I expect my fellow gamers to be honest about these microtransactions instead of confusing others or pretending like they don't exist. Because if that kind of player attitude continues, well then who's to say that those business guys that are running the show won't add more monetization in the future? Jagex is a company that's been owned by several investment firms over the years, and those guys only care about one thing, which is making as much profit as possible. But what do you guys make of the old school bonds? Let me know in the comment section below. Do you like or hate the bonds, or maybe it's something that doesn't affect you at all? Thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one.